Right now, somewhere in the world, a person is standing in their own kitchen, looking at a kettle they've used every single day for 30 years. And for a few terrifying seconds, they have no idea what it is, not what it's called, not what it's for, just a strange metal object that suddenly means nothing. This isn't a scene from a movie. This is what's happening, quietly, inside millions of brains right now, because of something called Alzheimer's disease. And here's the part that surprises most people. This process can begin 15, even 20 years, before anyone notices a single symptom. So what is actually happening inside the brain during that time? What is Alzheimer's really doing, cell by cell? And more importantly, once you understand it, what can you actually do about it? By the end of this video, you'll understand Alzheimer's disease in a way that almost no one explains it. Simply, clearly, and in a way that actually matters for you and the people you love. Let's start with a story. Imagine a woman named Margaret. She's 68, sharp, funny, the kind of person who remembers everyone's birthday without writing it down. One afternoon, she calls her daughter to ask about dinner plans for that weekend. 20 minutes later, she calls again. Same question, same tone, like the first call never happened. Her daughter laughs it off. Mum's just getting a little forgetful, she thinks. We've all said something like that about someone we love. And most of the time it really is nothing. Just normal aging, a busy mind, a long day. But for millions of families, that small, repeated moment is the very first sign of something much bigger, already underway, something that started long before anyone noticed. Here's what makes Alzheimer's disease so difficult to grasp. It doesn't announce itself. There's no sudden event, no clear before and after. It creeps in slowly, through tiny changes that are easy to dismiss. A missed appointment here, a repeated story there, a familiar name that suddenly takes a second too long to recall. Each one, on its own, means almost nothing. But underneath all of it, something is happening at a microscopic level, inside the very cells that make you, you. And here's what most people don't realize. Alzheimer's disease isn't really a disease of forgetting, in the way we casually use that word. It's a disease of connection, of the brain's wiring slowly being disrupted. Think about everything your brain does without you even thinking about it. Recognizing a face, recalling a memory, finding the right word, knowing how to get home. All of that depends on billions of brain cells, called neurons, constantly talking to each other across trillions of tiny connections. Alzheimer's disease attacks exactly that, the connections themselves. So if Margaret's brain is starting to change, what is actually going on inside it? What does Alzheimer's disease look like, not from the outside, but from the inside, at the level of cells and proteins? That's where things get genuinely fascinating, and honestly, a little eerie. Because the story of Alzheimer's disease is really the story of two troublemaker proteins, slowly building up inside the brain for years, before anyone notices a thing. Let's go there now. To understand Alzheimer's disease, you first need to picture a healthy brain cell, or neuron, as something like a tiny tree. It has a body, and branches reaching out to connect with other neurons. These connection points are called synapses, and this is where information actually passes from one cell to the next. Every thought, memory, and movement you've ever had travels through these connections. Now, in Alzheimer's disease, two main troublemakers show up. The first is called amyloid plaques. Imagine a sticky substance, made from a protein fragment called beta amyloid, slowly building up in the spaces between neurons. In a healthy brain, this protein is produced and cleared away regularly, like taking out the trash. But in Alzheimer's disease, for reasons researchers are still working to fully understand, this clearing process breaks down. The protein fragments start clumping together, forming sticky deposits called plaques. Picture these plaques like leaves piling up around the roots of a tree, slowly making it harder for nutrients and signals to get through. The second troublemaker is called tau tangles. Inside each neuron, there's a structure a bit like an internal scaffolding or train track, made of a protein called tau. This scaffolding helps transport nutrients and important materials up and down the cell. In Alzheimer's disease, the tau protein changes shape and starts to twist into tangled clumps, what scientists call neurofibrillary tangles. Using our tree analogy, imagine the internal support structure of the tree trunk slowly twisting and collapsing from the inside. The train tracks inside the cell break down, and the neuron can no longer transport what it needs to survive. Here's the part that's genuinely important to understand. This isn't a sudden collapse. It's a slow, gradual process. Plaques build up outside the cells. Tangles build up inside the cells. And little by little, communication between neurons starts to weaken. Synapses, those connection points, begin to fail. And when synapses fail, the information that used to travel smoothly between brain cells starts to get lost along the way. This is why memory is often affected first, especially short-term memory. The part of the brain most often affected early on is called the hippocampus. Think of it as the brain's filing clerk, responsible for taking new information and filing it away as a memory. When the hippocampus is among the first areas affected by plaques and tangles, new information, like a conversation from this morning, has trouble getting properly filed. But here's something that surprises a lot of people. Older memories, especially deeply emotional ones from decades ago, are often filed in different parts of the brain that may not be affected until much later. That's why someone with Alzheimer disease might vividly remember their wedding day from 50 years ago, but struggle to remember what they had for breakfast. As the disease progresses, plaques and tangles don't stay in one place. They gradually spread to other regions of the brain, areas responsible for language, reasoning, judgment, and eventually, basic bodily functions. This is why Alzheimer's disease isn't just a memory problem. Over time, it can affect how someone speaks, how they make decisions, how they move, and how they recognize the people closest to them. It's not that the person forgets their loved ones in the way we forget a name. It's that the very brain pathways that connect a face to a feeling of recognition have been gradually disrupted. Now, you might be wondering, if all of this happens at a microscopic level, how does anyone even know this is what's going on? This is where modern research has made remarkable progress. Brain imaging techniques can now detect signs of amyloid buildup years before symptoms appear. Researchers can study patterns of brain shrinkage, especially in the hippocampus, using MRI scans. And studying donated brain tissue after death has allowed scientists to map out, in incredible detail, exactly how plaques and tangles spread through the brain over time, region by region. So to summarize what we've covered so far, Alzheimer's disease involves two key changes inside the brain: sticky amyloid plaques building up between neurons, and twisted tau tangles forming inside neurons. Together, these gradually damage the connections, or synapses, that neurons use to communicate. This process often starts in the hippocampus, which is why short-term memory is often affected first, and then spreads to other regions over years, affecting language, judgment, movement, and recognition. But understanding what's happening is only half the story. The question everyone really wants answered is this: if this process can start so quietly, so many years before symptoms appear, is there anything that can be done? Can it be slowed down? Can it be caught earlier? And just as importantly, if someone you love is going through this, what can actually help? Today, right now, that's exactly what we're going to cover next. Let's start with the question on everyone's mind. Can Alzheimer's disease be prevented or slowed down? Here's the honest answer. There is currently no single proven way to completely prevent Alzheimer, and there's no cure yet that reverses the damage once it's significant. But, and this is a genuinely hopeful but, research has identified a number of factors that appear to influence brain health and may help reduce risk or slow progression, especially when addressed earlier in life. The first area is cardiovascular health. What's good for your heart appears to be good for your brain too. The brain depends on a constant, healthy supply of blood, carrying oxygen and nutrients. Managing blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar levels through regular checkups, medication when needed, and lifestyle choices supports healthy blood flow to the brain over the long term. The second area is physical activity. Regular movement, even something as simple as a daily walk, has been associated in research with better brain health over time. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain and may support the growth of new connections, between neurons. You don't need to run marathons. Consistency matters more than intensity. The third area is mental and social engagement. Remember those synapses we talked about, the connections between neurons, engaging in mentally stimulating activities, learning new skills, staying socially connected with friends and family, and even simple things like reading, playing music, or doing puzzles may help support and even build new neural connections. Think of it as helping the brain build detour routes around areas that may be struggling. The fourth area is sleep. During deep sleep, the brain runs a kind of cleanup process, helping clear away waste products, including some of those amyloid proteins we discussed earlier. Chronic poor sleep over many years has been linked, in research, to higher levels of amyloid buildup. Prioritizing consistent, quality sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It may genuinely support your brain's natural cleanup system. The fifth area is diet. While no single food prevents Alzheimer's disease, dietary patterns rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, fish, nuts, and olive oil, often described as Mediterranean-style eating patterns, have been associated with better brain health outcomes in research studies. Now, let's shift to something just as important. What if someone you love has already been diagnosed or is showing early signs? What can actually help right now? First, early evaluation matters. If you're noticing persistent changes, not just an occasional forgotten name, but a pattern of memory or thinking changes that's affecting daily life, talking to a doctor early opens the door to evaluation, support resources, and in some cases, treatments that may help manage symptoms, especially in earlier stages. Second, routine and structure help enormously. A predictable daily schedule, consistent times for meals, activities, and sleep can reduce confusion and anxiety for someone living with Alzheimer's disease. The brain may struggle with new information, but familiar routines rely less on creating new memories and more on established patterns. Third, communication adapts, but connection doesn't have to disappear. As we mentioned earlier, emotional memories are often preserved longer than factual ones. This means that even when someone can't recall a name or a recent conversation, they can often still feel love, comfort, and connection. Speaking slowly, using simple language, maintaining eye contact, and focusing on emotional tone rather than correcting every mistake can preserve connection in powerful ways. Fourth, caregivers need support too. This is something that often gets overlooked. Supporting someone with Alzheimer's disease is physically and emotionally demanding, and caregiver burnout is real. Support groups, respite care, and simply talking to others going through the same experience aren't luxuries. They're essential parts of sustainable care. And finally, hope matters, because research is moving forward. In recent years, there's been growing scientific interest in therapies that target those amyloid plaques directly, along with continued research into early detection methods, like blood tests, that may one day help identify changes years before symptoms appear. While there's still a long way to go, the pace of research into Alzheimer's disease has accelerated significantly, and that's something worth holding on to. So let's bring this back to Margaret, and to the kettle, and to that brief moment of confusion in the kitchen. What we've learned today is that Alzheimer's disease isn't a mystery, it's a process. A slow, biological process involving plaques, tangles, and connections, one that researchers understand more every single year. And while it's a serious and often heartbreaking condition, understanding it, takes away some of its power to frighten us into silence. Whether you're watching this out of curiosity, out of concern for yourself, or because someone you love is going through this right now, I hope this gave you something valuable. Not just facts, but a little more clarity, and maybe a little more hope. If this video helped you understand Alzheimer's disease a little better, consider giving it a like. It genuinely helps this information reach more people who need it. If you know someone who's caring for a loved one with memory changes, or who's simply curious about brain health, share this video with them. It might mean more to them than you realize. And if you have questions, thoughts, or even your own experiences to share, leave a comment below. This is a space for learning and support, together. Subscribe if you'd like to keep learning about brain health, memory, and practical ways to support the people we love. Thank you for spending this time with me, and take care of that incredible brain of yours.